Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Dog Pound Pod. We're talking all things Browns offseason, and joining me today to do just that, T-Bone from the Common Man and T-Bone Show, 97.1 The Fan, Columbus, Ohio. T-Bone, thank you for joining me.
Glad to be with you, man. It's good to talk with a fellow Browns fan. Good to talk about a crazy season that ended up, I think, surpassing a lot of expectations. And yeah, it's it's a fun time to be a Browns fan. This is one of the weirder off seasons we've had in a while because it's not like immediately clear that, oh well, they have to go draft a quarterback, or oh, they have to get a new head coach, or oh no, like that's not what we're dealing with now there's a big structure there that we can lean on and say, all right, now how do we take the next steps? So yeah, this is fun.
Yeah, there's different expectations, and that's something. I mean, you've been a Browns fan your whole life, I assume.
Yeah,
And,
absolutely.
I mean, how many years, the thing I always say is with this season, it seemed like the chapter is being written. The page has been flipped. It's a new chapter. Um, it was a long way getting here, but we're here now. This is the new Cleveland Browns. So what was your expectations at the beginning of the year going through the typical Browns offseason of, hey, we got a new head coach, we got a new GM, we got to rebuild this, we got to do that. Um, we did those things, and normally we try to do those things and they don't work. This season was different. Take me through what you were expecting versus your thoughts, I guess, on what actually happened this year.
Yeah, well, one of the things that, I mean, at the start of the year, I guess the nice thing about doing what I do is that we have to every year give our predictions, and I'm sure you guys do too. And but so I at the beginning of the year said 10-6 and fighting for a playoff spot. I'll be good with that, because they I felt like really should have been a playoff team last year. I was really frustrated with how that went with Freddie Kitchens, talking about 2019, obviously not 2020. And then so I wanted to see them jump up and be playoff caliber, but I also realized, Steelers could be good.
Is that you?
I don't know where that's from.
That ain't me. That is
Yeah,
hilarious.
I
What was that?
I don't even know. I have like a bunch of websites up from, work of just
Oh
having
my
stuff to
gosh.
talk about. So
That is
sorry about that.
hilarious. No,
I've
you're
never
good.
I've never had that happen. I've done like a million Zoom calls this year with
Oh my
all kinds of stuff.
gosh.
Me and my brother do a racing podcast and we record on Zoom, and like
Yeah.
never once have I had that happen. But it was just
That's
it was an ad that just started up somewhere. So sorry
I
about
wondered because I was like, I looked down at my phone and I was like, I don't see anything. It's funny. Do you know who have you ever heard of Sir Yacht?
that. Oh yeah. The guy,
So
yeah,
yeah,
TikTok, and yeah, goes around
yeah.
all of Ohio. Yeah.
So I did an interview with him a while back. He was my first this style of interview because I wanted a while back. I was like, I want to start having people on because I've been doing this by myself for a
Yeah.
long time. So I was like, I need to start, talking to people, doing whatever. And I was like, well, like who's somebody who I could probably get as like a first kind of like I didn't want to jump all in first. I just want to kind of get my feet wet as far as the
Right.
interviewing goes. And I was like, man, I wonder if he'd do it because I'd talked to him on social media before. And he was like, yeah. So, anyway, long story short, I had planned for everything. And then my phone goes off. And I was like, what the heck? Because I was like, all right, let's make sure everything's off, nothing to interfere. And of course it did.
Right.
So,
It's
no,
all good.
that's
Actually, sadly, that's the thing is I'm the radio pro. Theoretically, I should be the one that has all that stuff locked down, but apparently, I don't even know. It was just like an ad that popped up on my screen. So sorry about that. But
no,
anyway,
you're good. It happens.
so
So,
expectations for the team. I'll wrap up my long-winded story by saying, yeah, they got to over 10 wins, which is good. They made the playoffs, which is great, and they beat the Steelers in the playoffs, which I mean, that was a cherry on top of the
oh
sundae.
my
I mean, that
gosh.
was beautiful. So that's for me exceeded expectations. Sadly, though, in the moment, right, in that Kansas City game, you're sitting there thinking, "Oh my gosh, if they could just get a stop on a 3rd and 14 with Mr. Anything is possible, Chad Henne of all people, right? You're that close to getting the ball back and possibly going down. Who knows what could have happened if they scored a touchdown? Maybe you go to an AFC championship game. I mean, it's tough to be greedy like that, right? When you've been a Browns fan for so long that has all these issues of watching the team lose and seeing them struggle. So I'm not overall, I'm happy. I'm thrilled. You see that in the moment, you're like, it sucks we couldn't get it done, but it's okay. That was a huge build for this team. Big step up for the Browns in 2020. So that's fine.
Yeah, I was the exact same way. Your Twitter when you were just laughing about that steal, I was the exact same way. And I think I even said that. I don't know if you read all your comments, but I was the exact same. I mean, I was rolling. I didn't even watch it down with my mom. I'm like, I gotta watch this alone. I gotta
Right.
be, and oh my gosh, I mean, the snap over the head, and then Ben throws a pick, and it's like just over and
That
over. It
game
was
was just something I've never. Right. I like I've had lots of times, sadly, where I've watched a Browns game and just had to laugh to keep from crying,
yeah,
because it's just like
but
this
for the wrong
stupid.
reason.
Right, where you're just like, holy bleep and bleep, and you're just,
Hmm.
you just have to laugh sometimes because it hurts so much. And in that game, like that first quarter, it was just like, did if you could have a Browns fan picking out on every play of a Madden game, like I want to just stop the game and make a simulation of how we can embarrass the Steelers further.
Mhm.
That's what we all would have picked. It was everything that happened in that game. And then it went. I mean, I don't think you could have designed it better to happen for the Browns. So that was truly a moment I'll never forget, was that Steelers
Well,
in the
and
playoffs.
Jim Donovan, I mean, the quote of all time, "May this first quarter never end." I mean,
Yes, of course.
perfect.
Right. It was just, you just wanted to sit in it forever. Just that particular moment of time. So it was
Yeah.
with
Well,
and with everything going on with Stefanski
mhm.
not even being able to coach the game, it just all the COVID issues. Your star wide receiver is on the shelf for half the year. So just, all the things, and I know the Steelers had their issues too, but it was so great to see them lose twice and just once in the playoff. That was phenomenal. Just great.
Well, and not only that, the way things happened, we talked about how it was over and over and over, but look at the guys who are doing it. I mean, MJ Stewart is the one who gets the pick on Ben, not Denzel Ward,
Mm.
not
Yeah.
Terrence, you know, it was your MJ Stewarts and it was your
Yeah.
Sheldrick Redwines. That's what the best part about it. It wasn't even like our stars against your stars. It was
No, it
we're
was
just here.
yeah, it was the walking wounded. And that was one of the things with his defense, right? That, I know we'll talk about more. And obviously this defense needs some vast improvement, but for the most part, like just being able to get to this point and get that team into the playoffs. And then, yeah, there were some frustrating moments down the stretch where, the Jets game will obviously was entirely frustrating. There were other situations too where you say, God, they were so close. They should have been able to pull this out. And so it's easy to get frustrated in those moments where you think, man, maybe they're not going to make the playoffs, but they found a way, they got there, and then they had one of the greatest wins in Browns history, right? I mean, that was just epic, beating the Steelers like that in a lot of different ways, in a Brownsy kind of way, right? Where all the bad luck the Browns usually get just landed on the Steelers for a night, and that was just amazing. So it's certainly something that I don't think you can count on next year, as far as, well, if they get into a playoff game, they're going to have, that type of luck go their way. They're going to have to not that they didn't deserve to win those games, but they had to get a couple things go their way too, and they did. So will that happen next year? I tend to think you can't rely on that. You have to rely on having just the flat out better team the whole way through.
Well, and the fact that the Steelers made a little comeback there in the third quarter was the perfect Browns. That was just insane. First quarter, dominate. Second quarter, you stay in, not as big as the first quarter. And then third quarter, it's like, well, here we go.
Yeah.
Here we go.
It was truly something. You're right. I was getting a little nervous, but I thought, any other team, I'm not getting nervous over this,
Hmm.
right? Like any other team, I'm not looking at this game and going, "Oh, it's in doubt." And then for a little bit, I got worried, but they pulled it out. So that's the beauty.
Yeah. So one thing you brought up, this defense obviously was, the Achilles heel of this team. And I think we knew that. We put so much emphasis on the offense and making sure that Baker was the right quarterback and trying to figure that out. This defense needs a lot of work. As far as free agency, we have guys like Ogunjobi who I don't want to say they're not replaceable, but they're guys who have had big impacts on this team. And I've always stuck with, hey, if you win with these guys who have been here with you through all this crap, I'd like to keep them. You know what I mean? Just as not that they're not even good players, but it's like, hey, as a courtesy, if you would like to stick around, hey, we're willing to give you X amount of dollars. Um, I guess I'll just ask you, is there anybody who's currently a free agent for us who's expected to hit the market that you certainly would like to see come back for the Browns?
Defensively, I mean, I don't think I have a ton of guys that I'm looking at and saying for sure bring them back. Like, I mean, the reality is you're going to need on this team vast improvements. I mean, you're going to need, I mean, you can even start at defensive end, right? I mean, Miles Garrett's the only guy right now under contract for this team that has more than 5 sacks from last year. So you're going to have to bring back guys, yes, some of whom are already in the building, but you're going to have to make those decisions. And I think those are some tough calls because while I think the defensive line is still very good, and I would consider that the strength of the defense, it certainly could have its improvements as well. But the temptation would be to look at your linebacker position and say, well, you got a bunch of guys who are just kind of dudes who are there, and they're not the linebackers of old, right? Where you build your defense around some of these star linebackers. Well, that's not how modern football works. I mean, they especially for analytics driven teams like the Browns are. You're not going to see them typically go out and sign a big name linebacker, middle linebacker guy. That's not what they do. So I don't think that's where the improvements come either. I think they are going to make huge improvements in the secondary. Part of that with just getting guys healthy, right? Like Grant Delpit, what can he do? We're going to find out. Um, I'm trying to remember. Is Ronnie Harrison? He's not a free agent, or is he? I'm trying to
No, he
like.
he's
Okay,
still on he's still under
yeah,
contract for
he's got one more year on his
yeah.
rookie deal, I think. Yeah. So
It's either one or two, I can't remember.
assuming he's back and healthy, assuming Delpit can get healthy, obviously you get Denzel Ward. Like I think where you really need to see the
And
improvement.
Grady,
Yeah, right.
if he can
Ingrid's there
stay
too,
healthy.
if he can stay healthy. Yeah. So between those two guys, safeties obviously to me, that's where I think you can make some big improvements. And it's not just about getting starter level. I think Delpit and Harrison will have you covered there, but it's about depth. I don't see bringing Sendejo back. Clearly, I mean, I think you can do better. So let's try to
I'd
do.
hope so.
I would, I would
I
hope
mean,
so too. But I think so I'm saying I don't think you're going to see big splashy names at safety necessarily, but you're going to need depth. You're going to need depth at corner too, obviously for injury purposes and otherwise. And then I think you shore up the defensive line and just try to make sure that you've got some guys there that can help take the attention. You're never going to take the attention off Miles Garrett. He's always going to be the number one thing they're going to game plan for. But if a couple other guys can sneak through there and hopefully, add to what the teams have to prepare for defensively, it's going to make his job easier. It's going to make life easier, and it's going to be a lot more quarterbacks on the ground. So that's what we're looking for.
yeah, I completely agree. The secondary certainly needs a lot of work. They don't, like you said, they don't need starters. I think Ronnie Harrison and Delpit, I think those are your guys for long term. Now, whatever long term means to you, you know, we'll see.
Well,
But
you know what? To that point, I mean, right now you're in a window. You've
yes,
got your quarterback. He's young. He's still affordable for another. Well, maybe not after this year, but the point being, like, you're going to have to pay him, and then you're eventually going to have to pay your running back, and then you're eventually going to have to pay
Mhm.
some other guys, like that you've already paid Garrett. So, like, suddenly, then all these young talented guys are going to become expensive guys. So the window to me is the next couple years before all that kind of changes, and then you've got to find different ways to do it. But you look at all the teams that have had to do that, like the Seahawks a few years ago. They had young, cheap
Mhm.
options, and then everybody got old and good and expensive, and it makes it tougher to sign the pieces to be flexible. So Browns are in that right now, is what I'm saying. And so you're right. It's you just got to add those pieces, get back there, and hope for some luck, and hope that everybody's healthy, and then go for it.
Yeah, I don't see a whole lot of big signings, mostly because of money. But I think also, like you said about this window, I think you're going to see Andrew Berry be very active in the trade market because of you look at the draft this year, you don't have a whole lot of tape. These guys are coming out, they don't even have really camps, they don't have the combine as normal. So it's easier to just say, hey, third round and fourth round picks are easier to get rid of, and you don't feel as guilty, as if it were a typical year. Guys that I have heard that I see us being interested in. Now, this one is kind of far fetched, but it's being talked about. JJ Watt, possible. I don't know what you would have to give up for him. I know because the Texans are in such a bad situation with their picks and they've gotten rid of so much. Would they take less? I don't know. Another name that I think I'm leaning, I think honestly, it's like 80% chance we get him, and that's Richard Sherman. Let me know your thoughts on that.
I think that'd be really interesting. I know some people are down on the idea to go back to JJ Watt of like, well, JJ Watt's older, he's been injury prone. Are we sure what we're getting with him with what is he now? Like 32, I think.
Hmm.
But and he's going to cost $17 million. That's his current deal. I don't know if they would be willing to trade for him at that price or if maybe they would try to see if the Texans would just part ways with him and then sign him at a smaller deal. I don't know, but I like the idea of him or Sherman, not because they're names, but because they are guys, especially in Watt's case. Richard Sherman's been there, done that, but JJ Watt, I think, would just the fact he gets to go up against his brother in this division, the fact that
Hmm.
he's got the the chance to win a Super Bowl, which is so weird for me to say with
Yeah, it is.
talking about this team, but we have to
Hmm.
get used to that's where they are right now. Is they are a team that should have a chance to win a Super Bowl. I think there's going to be some attractiveness there, right? Of him to come to Cleveland and just say, "Look, I want to help be the guy that helps push this team over the edge." Like I said, I don't think this is getting JJ Watt 5 years ago or even 3 years ago. I think it's a different guy. But the leadership he brings, he's not going to let anybody's level dip at all. I just feel like those are the type of moves now. You're trying to shore up the roster. You've got good young talent at a lot of places. So, defensive line, you've got a stud on the other side on the defensive line. So you bring in a JJ Watt, and then his goal is there to help make Miles Garrett as good of a player as he possibly can, you know? And he's already a better player right now than JJ Watt is. JJ Watt is and nearing the end or the later parts of his career. I don't mean to put him out the pasture, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So if he comes in, part of it's going to be helping to continue to get Miles Garrett to be as good as he can, and practicing next to JJ Watt, I would think would help you do that. And say for Richard Sherman in the secondary, right? Teaching some of these guys just, how to go about their business, how to handle it. And obviously I like Richard Sherman's personality. Not everybody does, but I
Hmm.
like that swagger. I like that attitude. I think that fits in well. Like the Jarvis Landrys of the world seem to do really well in this culture that the Browns have built. And I think Richard Sherman fits in like Jarvis does, where he's an outspoken guy, he's vocal, he can back it up. And I think those are the type of players right now. You just want guys who are going to come in here and they're done with all the BS. They're done with everything in their careers that, has defined them to some way. They just want to come in and win football games and they're going to help you out in that way. And I think Richard Sherman, maybe some people don't feel that way, but I think he could be that guy too. I'm not down on either of those. If they want to go JJ Watt, they want to go Richard Sherman. As long as the price is right, I'm okay with
Hmm.
either guy.
Yeah, and I think it's the veteran thing. I think this is such a young roster. You need those guys to fill the cracks who can be there as a shoulder to lean on. So, yeah, and just again, T Bone joining us from the Common Man and T Bone Show. Be sure to go check them out. So let's talk about the draft. Browns picking number 26, not number one, not number four, not 10, 26. This is a little bit different. It's weird. It's very weird, especially when you look at the names. It's like, well, they could well, no, no, they're going to be higher. We're used to that. Hey, we're going to get this guy, we're going to get that guy.
Yeah.
This year it's kind of like, who knows. I have three names that I've kind of singled in on. I don't know how much you've looked into the draft or not. um but the one you talked about, defensive end, I think Carlos Basham Jr. out of Wake Forest is a guy who, this defensive end class this year, I don't want to say it's not as good because it's very unique. I think all three of these top guys, they're very different. Now you got guys like Quiddy Pay out of Michigan who seem to have come on very late, but also there's not a whole lot of film on.
Yeah.
Um, So Carlos Basham to me is a guy who I don't want to say he's not going to be very valued, but as far as I don't see him being an upper first round pick. I think he's a guy that could slip that would be perfect opposite of Miles. I think that's the thing as Browns fans, we have to understand we're not going for the number one. We're looking for a good complement to Miles.
Well, but that's a great point. What is a number one, or when people talk about a strong draft class for defensive ends,
Hmm.
what are they saying? They're saying if there are three guys the caliber of a Miles Garrett or three top 10 pick level defensive ends, then it's considered like a really strong class, you know? But the reality is what most teams in the NFL need, and certainly a team like the Browns would need, they need guys who are going to come in and be really good from day one, starter level pros that get the job done and are, maybe they become pro bowlers, maybe they become, a couple all pro seasons. But if you're picking late in the first round, it'd be great if you drafted a Hall of Famer. But you know what else is also great? To not draft a bust. Like,
Hmm. Yeah,
just
no
draft
kidding.
another guy who can get in there and help you. And when they're playing against Miles Garrett, or against next to Miles Garrett on
Hmm.
the other side of that line, maybe they play a little better. Maybe they get to a little quicker to their full potential. And if you then took them and they got a big deal 3 or 4 years into their career and then they go somewhere else, well, maybe they don't have Miles Garrett on the other side anymore. And maybe they're not as good. You know what I mean? Like, if you get a solid pro who can play next to him and also be a double digit type of guy as far as getting after the quarterback, maybe, 8 to 10 sacks. You know what I mean? Like, I'll take that. I'll take that from the second guy who then is going to require double teams as well and free up Miles Garrett. So
It's fit.
it's all relative.
Fit matters. And that's something
Yeah.
that people don't want to hear when it comes to the draft. People look at the name value, or I'm sorry, name brand, I should say. It's the fit. You might get guys who come in and they fit a 3-4, and you're running a 4-3.
Yeah.
It
Right.
doesn't fit all the time. Um, but so yeah, Carlos Basham is one guy I had listed. Another guy who I think, we talk about depth. And to me, this is interesting because assuming we don't get Richard Sherman, right? A guy that could potentially fall, because I think the question here is how much are they going to value Greedy Williams? Are they going to count on him to be a big part of this defense? I wouldn't. I love Greedy. You can go back and check out my thoughts when we drafted him. I loved Greedy.
Yeah.
But the reality is he's injured and he's injured a lot.
Mhm.
A guy I'm looking at, JC Horn. I don't know. Um, he's another guy kind of like Basham to where he could creep up, but I think the depth at that position, they're all, like I said, they're very different. You have guys, and another one, Sean Wade, we thought was going to be a top level coming into the year. He went from playing inside to going back to outside, which is his normal position that he played in high school. Um, it didn't transfer, or at least not as easy as we thought. That could be because of offseason and all that. Um, so maybe he's a guy the Browns look at later, but if they're looking to go corner early, I think Horn could be there, and I think that'd be a good fit.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea. The Sean Wade thing is interesting too because I think he's built to play safety. I mean, I just don't think he is a corner in the NFL, and I feel like that maybe it's tough to see him at the first round because a lot of times safeties don't tend to get taken in the first round, but if they do, they are like exceptional leadership off the charts, the guy that like had the tremendous college career and you just assume all right, he's going to get there, or of course, the Browns draft somebody out of Michigan maybe a little earlier
Oh
than,
yeah.
but either way, the point is usually safeties that are taken in the first round, they're like still going to be a couple years from fully being what they could be, but at least they come in right away and they're like it's like they're 35 and then they're 22. It's like mentally they're just a different guy. And sometimes those guys sneak into the first round. So I don't know that Sean Wade necessarily fits that mold. I think he's a talented player. I still think he's going to need some time to grow into the role safety or corner, whatever team drafts him is going to have to be patient with him, I think, because I do think it's going to take some time to get there. So it's not a bad pick. I mean, certainly getting guys late in the first round or, in a spot where they may have fallen from where they should be, there's motivation there too. So maybe that works out that way. But
Yeah,
yeah,
I think
I think end of the first round though, you can really get some gems if you know what you're doing and you know what you're looking for.
as far as Wade, I'm not touching him unless it's mid second round, late second round, early third round.
Yeah.
Nothing against him. I know, he's a great guy. He's done great things at Ohio State here. But as far as exactly what you said, transferring to the NFL, if
I
we're
just don't think
drafting
I
him,
don't think he's playing corner in the NFL. That's the thing. Like
I
and
would I'd be willing to play him inside, try him out because that's what he was best at
yeah, that's true.
against elite
Yeah.
talent.
Yeah, that's
Clemson
fair.
last year.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, maybe it works out that way, but either way, I think it's still it's a lot to left to be desired from what we saw this year. It's not what we thought we were getting out of him, but
Oops.
reality
There we
is
go.
oh
There's my phone.
the
I
good thing
set
is
I set an
oh,
alarm.
okay, yeah, that's cool. Well, either way, with the Browns this year, the good news is the offseason, the draft is going to be more of if you are like a football, like watch the offensive line and you take notes. You know what I mean? This is your draft because this is not the draft for like, oh yeah, they're just going to take the best quarterback available or the, best defensive end or something. Like they've got those positions now, which is great. So now we get to see kind of what this front office can really do when it comes to fine tuning because that's a much different task than going out and building with cornerstones and fixing big problems. Like defensively, they still need to fix big problems, but they do have some guys there. They have some cornerstones on defense too. They just got to build the rest of it. So this offseason will be very interesting to watch from that standpoint.
Well, and that's what Dorsey was came here for. Dorsey came here to get the big brand guys, your quarterbacks, your receivers. You got to get a great corner. He did that. And I mean, he got Nick Chubb in the second round. That's just unbelievable. But
Great find.
he also messed up on the simple, not really simple, but you get what I'm saying. Taking a guard who didn't work out. You take Chad Thomas, that didn't work out. You got, so he made a lot of good picks, but what what Andrew Barry does best to me is he picks smart. Like there were some times in the draft where I felt like there was a guy like Zach Bond. Zach Bond was a guy who was there that I was like, okay, he maybe not fit right, but he's attractive. We passed because he didn't fit.
Yeah.
Instead, we take Jacob Phillips, and Jacob Phillips seems to have potential. So, yeah, as far as the offseason, I think, you know, Andrew Berry did such a great job filling in the cracks this past offseason. I think his job, it's going to be a lot tougher because there's going to be so much overhaul on the defense. But I think if there's somebody that you would like to entrust that with, I trust him. I
Yeah.
do.
I have been very critical of this front office, not this one, but front offices that have worked for the Browns over the
Mhm.
years, coaching staffs that have worked for the Browns over the years. And I do feel like now you're mostly okay there. I mean, I think we could still talk defensive coaching staff, that's still going to be an open discussion, but the reality is the Browns are a team that is, I don't know, what percentage would you say the Browns are there? 80%,
Um,
85% there, 90% there. I mean, they're a lot closer than they've been in the last 20 years to building a championship winning team. So now it is a different task, I think, and we'll see what this current group can do. But I'm with you. I think they tend to do better at filling in the margins and picking, the pieces that fit exactly. And that becomes much more challenging when you've got big name stars that you hope to pay. When you have, pieces like Odell Beckham Jr., you still got to figure out what's going on there with him when he recovers from his injuries. So these are things that I think now this front office is going to have a different level of a task that I think they're up to.
yep, it's certainly going to be interesting. So before we go, do you have a way too early prediction for next season?
Mm. Yeah, I feel like I don't know what to make of the Steelers, right? As far as in this division, but I tend to think they're not going to be taking a step forward next year. I feel like that what were they 13-3 this year, right? So
Um, well, no, they were like, oh, well, they won the division. I think they were 12-4 because
12-4, that's right.
they lost the last 5 straight, I believe.
Well, yeah, 4 straight. They couldn't have lost 5 straight, right? Oh, yes,
I
going
mean,
into the
playoffs.
playoff
Yeah.
game. Yeah. Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. So either way, like if they fall back to a 9-10 win team next year, would that totally surprise you? It wouldn't me.
No.
I could see them being that
I
at
could
least.
see them being under 500.
True. Right. So they're potentially but they also have the potential that they find a running back and Big Ben just continues to be pretty good in the regular season. You got to think that's going to fall off at some point, but let's just pencil them in for 10 wins just to kind of put them in a reasonable place, not too high, not too low. Where does that leave the Ravens, right? I think the Ravens are still going to be a team that's right there with 10 to 12 wins. So, I mean, the Browns clearly have shown their ability to be in that conversation. I don't think it's out of the question that the Browns could win the division next year. I mean, God, you'd hope that the first 2 times they play the Ravens and the Steelers, they won't get blown out by 30, you know? I'd like to think that even what we saw earlier this year, that won't happen again. I know it's the Browns, but damn it, I
Mhm.
wanna be positive. I wanna believe. So, I'm gonna say that the Browns get 12 wins and win or tie for the division. That's what I'm gonna say next year. Early prediction. Of course, without remembering what the schedule is right off the top of the head. I know
It's
that
tough. It's
yeah,
tough.
I'm
We got
sure.
some
Well,
tough
because
games.
it's a
Mhm.
tougher road now because of the fact that they've finished better and yeah, it's not going to be easy. But I'm going to say 12 wins.
I'm gonna say the Browns go 13-3, win the division, and get to the AFC Championship.
I like it. I like it.
I'm gonna go big. Now, of course, who knows what happens, but
Yeah, yeah. I'll tell you
so
the one last thing. Like a guy that I've really enjoyed watching over the last few years. Now with the Bills, obviously Stephon Diggs. And I'm not saying his position because I don't think the Browns are going to go make a splash for someone like him, but how he came in and just their offense went from pretty good to okay, it's championship level. That's the pieces that I think you could see the Browns getting. Where Stephon
speed.
Diggs, well, yeah, but it's just Stephon Diggs was kind of written off to some degree as like, well, I don't know, something's with him, and who knows, like maybe he's not as good as we thought he was. And then he shows up in Buffalo and he was perfect for what they needed. And he was just nails. And I thought he made Josh Allen better. Like just
Oh, absolutely.
so I'm saying I don't not that you need don't misread that as like they need to go find that version of him at wide receiver. I'm saying they need to find the pieces like him that complement what they already have and bring the level up for everybody else. And that's I think defensively where they need to be targeting is a couple guys like that who are veterans, maybe they've been cast off a little bit or doubted, who are just ready to go prove themselves and the Browns swoop in, get them and they suddenly have like bounce back years and play really well.
Well, in that same role with Stephon Diggs, Odell Beckham Jr., I mean, if we can figure it out, that'd be great. I
I'd
mean,
like to. I hope so.
I hope so too.
Because I,
Be
I I have to believe that Baker can deal with having him out there and they can coexist. And I don't think I really don't think he's that bad of a teammate. I know a lot of people have made a lot of stories about that, but I think sometimes you got to work to find what your offense is. And now I think they know it a little bit better and he'll factor in that. I don't think having Odell Beckham Jr. is a bad thing. I guess that's where I come
Mhm.
down on it. That sounds not crazy, but there were parts of the season where people were like, maybe if he's not out there, they're better offensively. Maybe, but I
I
still think
think
it's
it's
better.
yet to be determined, and I
I think
think
it's
that's
better
the
with
big
than without, I would say, but
I
yeah,
think
you're
that's
right. It
gonna
is
be
yet to
a
be determined for sure.
I think that's gonna be a big, big thing from this offseason. And another thing, I know we're wrapping up quick, and I appreciate your time.
Sure.
That's the biggest thing I think for this offensive staff. I mean, the focus is gonna be on defense, and that's gonna be Andrew Berry and Joe Woods. For Kevin Stefanski and for AVP, sit down with Odell Beckham, sit down with all your guys, sit down with Baker and say, "Listen, can we figure this out? Okay, do you wanna
Yeah.
be here? Yes, okay. Well, here's what worked. Can we fit you into this?
Yeah. Right.
Work it out. You gotta be able to work it out." So, But
I
anyway, I
agree with you.
appreciate. Go ahead.
Oh, I just said I agree with you, and I think they will. I think they'll find a way to get everybody on the same page because it's too much meat on the bone, man. Like when everybody sees what's out there and sees what this
Mhm,
team can do, I mean, how bad do you want to win a Super Bowl? I think the answer for all these guys is I want to win it really effing bad. So,
mhm.
so what is that going to take? Then I think everybody's going to see how close they are, and I would guess OBJ watching it on the sidelines had to feel like, man, I want to be a part of this. I do not want to be somebody that leaves this. I want to be here. So I think you'll see whatever improvements need to be made there on his part.
Yep, they're certainly going to try to figure it out, so we can only hope. So, anyway, let the people know where they can find you on social media.
Of course, at Degenerate T Bone on Twitter's probably the best way. That's uh I'm always riled up during a Browns game, so usually you will hear from me during a Browns game. But yeah, for sure, anytime there's any big moves or with the draft, we'll have a different way of watching that this year. But I'm excited for it, and yeah, so follow me there. I'm on 97.1 The Fan in Columbus. You can find us at 971thefan.com or on the app. Just download 971 The Fan in the App Store. You can find it there and get us wherever you live. So there you go.
Be sure to go give Common Man and producer Teddy some love too on social media follows.
Yeah, absolutely right. At Common Man Radio and at the Panama Ted on
Yep.
Twitter. You can follow those
Yep.
guys too. So perfect.
All right. Well, everybody, thank you so much for watching. Like I said, be sure to go follow them, go support them. He went over at 97.1 The Fan, 3 to 6. Go check them out. You'll be entertained. Um, so yeah, thanks for watching. Let us know your thoughts and what are you looking for here? What are you looking for in free agency, draft? Who didn't we name that you are looking for? So I appreciate you guys watching. Like I said, let me know your thoughts and we will see you in the next one. See you.